Welcome to another episode of Spirit of an Athlete. I'm your host, Amanda Smith. And on this episode, I'm speaking with Adele Spurgin, who's a team facilitator for high performance. She talks in this episode about culture specifically. We dive into culture because this is an area where coaches tend to struggle. And it's really where we build the groundwork of skills performance on top of dynamic performance, as you'll hear from Adele. But this is the mindset piece, the mental game that coaches are in need of extra support in because it's not something that we generally work through. We like to specialize as coaches in skills. So, in this episode, you learn what culture is and then how culture trickles down from the top, from the organizational level to the coaches and then down to the players. What I love about Adele is she has several certifications, as well as she was a junior national softball player. So, her and I got to relate around softball as well. But she's also got that woo side of her, which her and I connected on as well. She's a Qigong instructor, a psychosomatic profiler, an EDIS trainer, a hypnotherapist, and a neurolinguistic programming expert. So, I hope you enjoy this episode with Adele. Hello, Adele. Thank you so much for joining me on Spirit of an Athlete for this episode on culture. So, this
It,
word culture, what does it mean? Please give us your definition of it.
thank you for asking, Amanda. And I like just up front, you might even say it in the show notes. I am from Australia. I have a bit of a different accent, so I always get people to say "G'day, mate" before we start anything. So "G'day, mate," not "G, mate." It's "G'day, mate."
Good day, mate.
"G'day, mate." There you go. Team culture. What is it? In a nutshell, and this is the easiest definition that I have come across, and what I love because I eat, sleep, and breathe it. Um, Team culture is the behaviors that the team allows to happen. So if
Allows.
that they allow to happen. So if there's counterproductive behavior, their culture will be that of counterproductivity. If they allow themselves to check in with each other, hold each other accountable, hey mate, I think you can actually do better. That's culture. So it's the behaviors that players and managers and organization allows to happen. How's that for the definition?
I like it. I like it a lot. And that word allows is man, that says it all. In a
It's
nutshell. I think that really
it,
covers what can and will go right and wrong.
and I guess that's why I love a behavioral framework around culture. So you can put values up on the board and go, we believe in honesty. We believe in accountability. I get that a lot in groups. We believe in everybody has a voice, but do they really? Like, are you as a team walking your talk? So that's the kind of
Right.
objective or lens that I come from. So a behavioral framework. And, Amanda, at the end of the day, I often see, and this is maybe ties in with your whole hierarchy question. If the top brass, because there's always a top, somewhere,
Mhm.
are putting in rules in order to police down the bottom, how often do we see the rule breakers? I mean, time after time after time. But when you as a cohort are instilling those behaviors on your own ground level and you've got a buddy that you are accountable to, man, it's just a very different dynamic. And that whole toxic culture can't permeate because you get the law of numbers. It's like the law of averages starts to swing towards self-policement as opposed to from the top down.
What was that, you have a quote that I absolutely love when it
the,
comes to this hierarchy of the organization and then the coaches and then the players, and having the organization really establish those rules. What is it that you say there?
Look, it's not the most liked quote by the people at the top because it's the fish stinks from the head down. And when you say that to people who are in a kind of CEO position or they're, academic administrators, you see their eyes. I'm like, I'm an Aussie. I can get away with saying stuff like that. We just kind of cut to the chase.
Ah, I'm an American and I cut to the chase. So so when you say that to them though, doesn't that it should open their eyes as well to the fact that they are the ones who set the culture. If the organizational level is on their game, they're not just setting the rules and watching to see who's going to break them. They're the ones that actually create this culture, and they're doing it through their own actions. They're doing it through how they administer all of their rules down to the coaches. And then do they allow the coaches to then do the work with the players, or is the organization micromanaging the players as well, right?
Well, this framework does challenge hierarchical or autocratic kind of leadership. So, to quote another famous fellow American that is currently taking Australia by storm, we have Tay Tay. She is in the
Oh
house.
yeah.
And I think one of the greatest philosophers of our time, and I don't mean that tongue in cheek, she says I think it's Anti-Hero, her song, where she says, it's sometimes easier to look straight into the sunlight than into the mirror. So there's another quote for
Mhm.
you. It's easier to not look internally and I guess not walk your talk. It's a lot more empowering to walk your talk. But if there's no checks and balances in place for you from top management down to middle, down to down to organization, if there's nobody holding each other accountable, then that stinky fish can really come to play.
So what does this look like when it comes to a sports team? And do you want to pick the level of play, or do we just overarching and say this is all levels of athletics?
It's all levels. I am working here in Australia with some high school teams. I'm working in some corporate kind of setup teams in America with some Div 1 teams. It's cultures across the board because behavior is across the board. I
Mhm.
think, and I'm not bagging sports people out at all. I'm an ex-sports person. I still play a little bit of sport on the side. It gives us joy to play sport, and team sport is even more so because, I think there's a real reason why some people are called to team sports as opposed to individual sports. I like to assess whether, people in the management kind of sphere have an ethos of those are my players to manage, or are they my assets to be developed? I think
Hmm.
world culture is yearning for the development of leaders. I see a trend coming from grassroots that the younger generation needs a different way of being led. They don't respond to the barking instructions. And there's time and place, when the building's on fire, time and place. And they respond to, why does my team exist? What is the purpose of the team? And that's one of the questions I ask my teams is what is the purpose of you as a team this year? Now, whether that be a what would you call it in America, like a T-ball team or a junior league? What is it?
Rec
What is it? That's it, yeah. Or if
recreational
it's
leagues. Yeah.
yeah, or if it's a development squad, or what is the purpose of it? Because that is what starts getting the emotion flowing, and that's why people, I think, play sport.
Mhm. Definitely. There's a lot of other crazy reasons why kids play sports, like their parents pushing them into a sport to vicariously live through them, or things
and
like
and
that.
and there's another team, that these exact same principles can be applied to. So it's not just, and that's what I'm seeing so often. It makes me so happy is we have great sessions and the kids are actually taking the stuff home to mom and dad going, oh my goodness, why do we exist as a team? What is our team trademark at home? And I'm like, it's awesome because it gives everybody a great behavioral framework.
It does, it really does. I love that. Yes. There's a really good book that I read before I had my child called The Entitlement Trap, and they teach
Ah,
a bunch of those kinds of frameworks around building your family motto and having your own family emblem and things like that, and I'm like, "Well, that's all the things that I learned in sports applied to a family dynamic.
dynamic.
Why aren't we doing that?"
Well, I really do believe that the push to, oh, well, I believe not the push. I believe that team dynamics is the next cutting edge piece de resistance that coaches, trainers, management, leadership can implement to really help progress any program. There's been so much mechanical. So I talk often about the dynamics in a team, obviously, and the mechanics. So the mechanics is you jump higher, you can stretch farther, you can, I don't know, throw more balls, your recovery. Those are the mechanical sides of a sport. And I'm not saying they're not
Mhm,
important. They're incredibly important. And there's been incredible advancements with tech on that side. Now it's like, okay, what about the dynamic side? There are dysfunctional elements in society. There are people who don't understand how their nervous system works. And then that filtrates into the team. So
mhm.
that dynamic area has got incredible scope now and demand for growth.
Yes, and it does feel like the physical versus the mental game, where the physical game is constantly being developed. We're constantly coming up with better skills, better equipment for the physical game. But now sports are finally starting to catch up with the mental side of
Mm.
things. Coaches are talking
Also,
about everybody must be mentally tough. Well, what does that mean? Right? And teaching that into the culture seems like it's something that has to be there in order for the team to really feel safe and have, Maslow's hierarchy, the foundation starts with safety. It
that's
starts
it.
with food, water, and housing, right? And then the next level above that is safety. And if we don't have that within a team, we don't have a team. We have a bunch of
Spot.
individuals. Are you
And,
seeing a trend in either of those directions where and I call this the me first movement? So there's a team full of individuals, or are we really starting to see where teams are understanding how to be individuals as well as be teammates, especially with the name, image, likeness stuff that we're dealing
mm,
with here in the States? Right? That creates a very individual athlete within a team dynamic. So, are you seeing any trends there?
nice question. I hear it being spoken by coaches a lot. I have kids who are in Div 1 college. And so I like to talk about the state that you have in your body, the story that runs parallel with it, and then the strategy. So the coaches are looking for a new strategy. I've got this NIL thing happening. People don't want to stay. And I'm like, well, what kind of environment are you creating for them to stay? Yes, there is a money aspect. I get that. And there's another way of doing it. So they're like, give me another strategy. I need to know another strategy because this whole NIL thing is blowing things up. And I'm like, well, what is your culture? What is your culture like? Go. So it does
Mhm.
require out of the norm thinking. It does require a coach. It does require leadership to actually stand up and be counted. And sometimes what I am noticing is there's a skills gap, a skill set gap where things like, having honest conversations, coaches don't know how to do it. And I am generalizing, please, because, it's not everybody. And I don't know all, what's it, 4 or 5,000 college coaches, but the skills gap around to have a genuine conversation. And I'm not talking about a conversation. Hey, buddy, how you going? Yeah, good. That's not a chicken. That is not a chicken. There is definitely a skills gap around relationship development. Oh, why should I get into the relationship? Why should I develop it? They're going to leave. Well, ideally, especially in college, kids are going to leave. Like, that's a fait accompli. You want them to leave. And what would stop you from creating a relationship? Because that is, again, going to hugely impact the environment and the team culture. So
Mhm.
I am seeing NIL play a role. Then I look at the greats of somebody like in the men's basketball kind of echelons of Coach K, who used to be at Duke. I'm
Mhm.
actually doing one of his like master classes. And They had NIL. I'm pretty sure they did before he finished. Maybe not.
Yeah, the
The,
last year and a
the
half.
last year, and it may be different now. There's still prestige going to that place. He was incredibly huge and still is on culture. He worked with the Redeem team, the American Redeem team, to get them back into the gold medal contention. Those people had all the money in the world. They could fly anywhere they wanted to. They had to bring them back into a team. And how do you do that? Because you are recruited as a player potentially on your individual ability. Now you've got to weave together this whole tapestry of people and get them singing along, playing like an orchestra. So it does require another skill set. And I think the time is rife. There's enough chitter chatter. There's enough people out there talking about this kind of stuff to make it permeate and seep through.
If you had a magic wand or this was the perfect world, what would it look like within the organization to have that kind of training, that kind of education?
I had a magic wand to have that trained, to have that education. Oh my goodness. To share with coaches that yes, this is an empowerment model. Yes, this is a model that is going to challenge autocratic or controller type thinking. It's going to make your life easier because I see a lot of coaches burn out. I really do. I see a lot of coaches who are burning both ends of the candle and it's push, push, push from their side. And there's not this kind of collective movement because all of a sudden, when it's just you, ideas are coming from you, plays are coming from you, motivation's coming from you. It's hard. In Australia, we call it hard yakka. Yakka, yakka. And it's hard
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
Yakka. And yakka makes for a lot of a burnout. And I'm seeing that as well. So for them to understand that yes, empowerment doesn't mean that we're just going to feed your team to the wolves. We're not going to just leave them alone, but we're going to help them with a massive sense of ownership towards their results. And that would be quite refreshing if I had a magic wand to for people to understand that
Mm.
it's empowering, but it's not leave you alone. It is ownership, and that is pretty freaking awesome from a player's perspective.
When it comes to ownership, oh, I like this one. When it comes to ownership, like what we teach our kids at home for ownership is, give them a budget, let them earn by doing chores or something like that, and then teach them how to go spend their money.
Uh-huh.
What does it look like to instill ownership in a team if culture isn't established yet?
Well, the beauty is you don't have to wait permission from the powers that be to actually start the whole ownership collective. There is so much information. I don't believe our younger generation needs more information. They need more transformation. They've got information at their fingertips. They don't have to wait for the coach to go, this toxic environment sucks. Let's do something different. They can by themselves actually start a movement. And that might sound like eye in the pie stuff. But when people and human beings have reached the point of this is not good enough, something needs to shift, the momentum can be enormous. So I would say to like players, don't wait for the coach to give you permission to start a cultural revolution within your team, to start putting down what do we want to see behavior wise. Like we want to see people come. I think Coach Carter did it beautifully in basketball. Like the movie Coach Carter, here is
I
your,
love that one.
yeah, it was a behavioral guideline. However, it came from him. It wasn't necessarily the players that decided. So I'm just saying, if it's not coming from the top, magic wand, why can't we push from the bottom? Like start, raising it from the bottom upwards.
So I can remember a time my freshman year of college, Division 1 softball, and the culture had been established for a very, very, very long time. And the people who were coming in, my freshman class was quite large. The people who were coming in were pushing against the culture on that team. And it became quite toxic. It became toxic for everybody. And I remember feeling like I'm part of the toxicity, but it's because I don't like what's happening at the top. What does a player do in that kind of situation? Just the
Well,
individual.
an individual, ideally you want to have a conversation, but it's challenging to have a conversation if there's no relationship base to work from. If you and your coach have only kind of grunted and nodded at each other, morning, yep, hey coach, how you going? Yep, all good, coach. We call it the grunt and nod phase. And if you don't have the skills with which to grow a relationship, what would a player need to do? Ask somebody who does know how to create great relationships, because there'll be somebody in the team who does know how to. They maybe have the mantle of the peacemaker. They may be the person who is able to connect with a lot of people on the teams and start learning how to read body language, how to have structured conversations. And we actually give a lot of, it's not scripts, but we share with people feedback formulas that work really well. What worked well, what didn't work so well, and what could we do better next time? That starts creating an
Mhm.
easier conversation. Asking your coach great questions. Questions are kind of my thing. However, that's all easy to say, but if you've got no basis from which to work from, so that's where we need to start. So we kind of share a pyramid of how to assess where the relationship is with a coach. What kind of expectations do you have? What do you think they're thinking? There's a nice little framework for that as well. So it's not just a one hit fix. Okay, I can't speak to the coach. What do I have to do now? Oh, I've got to, wear my big panties and go and just chat to them. There is a bit of a process, and if it's a dire straight situation, go to somebody who knows how to do it, who knows how to connect, and there will be somebody in your team.
You would hope that the captains on the team would have that kind of relationship with the coaching staff. You would hope that you have a connection with one of the coaches or someone at the organizational level. Yeah, that's interesting
Uh,
and unfortunate also.
Sure. It's fascinating. Our recruitment process with our kids overseas, we were told by many of the colleges was very different because we kind of interviewed them. I don't know if that's like a good or bad thing, but we had our questions to the coaches. When I say we, the way we raised our children. So, coach, tell me what happens when you lose. You're on a losing streak.
Mhm.
What is the procedure? Do you go and only watch film? Do people actually have a bit of a powwow? How do you do it? How do you handle adversity? Coach, have you been ever asked to assess your performance by team members? Like, what is it like? And very quickly you can ascertain whether it is going to be this autocratic my way or the highway. One of
Mhm.
my one of my favorite books, John Maxwell, Five Levels of Leadership, and he speaks about level one being very positional. So you do as I say. I'm the coach. I'm the leader. So therefore, you have to do what I say you have to do. Our model that we love through the behaviors is the captain isn't always the person who is the loudest or the proudest. Our captains or our leadership team are the people who actually adhere to the values and the beliefs the most. Sorry, the values and the behaviors. So it's the leadership team can be somebody actually quite junior, but who walks and talks the values and the beliefs and the behaviors that the team has asked for.
Wow.
It flips a few
How
things on its head.
it does, it totally does. When it's a new program or a new team, what's one of the first things a coach should do to establish culture?
Great question. New team, new coach, new environment. Uh, Articulate what they want the environment to be like, winning and losing environment. Uh, so again, asking questions, why do we exist? We kind of work on a 6 or 7 framework positioning statement, but also start creating what does the coach have. So here's what happens, Amanda. When people come into a new place, into a new area, into a new team, they typically go back onto what has worked for them in the past. That's human nature. We go back to the, I did this at such and such place. I did this at such and such college. It worked like a charm. Times have changed. Tech has created a different speed with which we as human beings are processing or not processing. So I think as much as that has kind of kept up with things, we need to keep up with things too on human behavior. Chip Conley, he's pretty big in America he's in the leadership kind of sphere as well with regard to hotels. I think he did a lot in the Airbnb space. And he actually says great leaders become amateur psychologists in one shape or form, some shape or form. And I like that. I really like that because without us and without understanding what makes us tick, we're going to flounder and we're going to be looked over as coaches by the person who can. So that a new team, a new coach, a new ethos, instead of just putting their stamp down, ask, well, what would you like the team to be like as well? What would you like that environment to be like? What would you like our winning environment and our losing? Because we're going to lose. I mean, that, people do lose.
Part of winning and losing.
Yeah. And start having conversations. You don't necessarily play a lot of rugby in America. In Australia, we play rugby and our big, big rivals are the All Blacks, which is the New Zealand, the Kiwi side.
Mm-hmm.
And the All Blacks have an amazing book. So for any coach listening who wants to understand a little bit about human culture, the Maori culture that has permeated the All Blacks philosophy it's spine-chilling, beautiful. And it's all about the tribe and how do we get the tribe marching in the same direction. So, if a coach doesn't know, that's a great start as well to kind of start dipping their toes into the water.
Educating themselves, right? Okay, so halfway through a season, I'm talking from experience, new team, new culture. We've talked about culture in the beginning. We've established what we want. About halfway through the season, we're starting to see the dominant players are playing more often. The not so dominant players are getting more bench time. And culture starts to break down.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? What do you do in this instant? Do you get everybody back together and have the same conversation over again?
Yep. Well, typically, I don't work with teams like as a one-hit wonder. I might come in and do a little bit of a motivational intro. I ask teams 3 questions initially. Can I ask them? Is that okay? Would it help people?
Absolutely.
How do you currently perceive your team? Like, give me 3 words that currently describe what's happening in the team. Second question is, how would somebody else, so opposition, how would they describe your team? So have you ever heard like teams going, great team on paper, can't travel for, that word, or a great team on paper, just can't string it together as a team. So how would another team describe your team currently at where you're at? And then how would you like to be described as? So there's the 3 questions. And those 3 form the backbone of the continual check-ins. That's the beauty of this kind of process, is that there are continual check-ins. So if this is the way you want to be described as, well, what's happening right now? Oh, so-and-so is getting more good. Oh, this is happening. And all the excuses, the verbal vomit will come out. But hold on, that's what you all collectively decided to be as, like wanted to be as. So what's stopping us? And there might need to be some individual coaching, here and there, but it's always to return them back to home base. That's what you decided collectively as a team. You want it to be known as what's happening. And it's not just a one-off check. There are continual check-ins. I find that the one-off checks just don't hack it.
Oh, I could imagine. So how often should they be checking in on their culture?
Oh, daily. It's like, are we living, breathing, walking it? Are those words on the board? They're there for a reason. They are our homing beacon. They are, that's where the mindset comes in. They are our, again, home base. It's like, that's the starting point, and that's where it's going to keep on, because that's what the pathway that you chose. And it's holding people accountable. Because, consistency, that's the goal for so many teams. Consistently walking the behaviors that you have outlined, and then helping them to find out why they don't. So, your question of how often should culture be looked at? Daily. Because daily, in our thinking, culture is not just, there's 7 aspects that create the vortex of culture, the good vortex. And environment, the environment that you find yourself is the quickest way to litmus test if your culture is actually being carried through.
Ooh, give us an example of this.
Well, exactly that. You're mid-season, you were 10-1 or 10-2, mid-season you come and all of a sudden you go 10-4. And then it's 10-6. And it's like, oh my goodness, so you've had a great run. And when you're winning, nothing hurts, right? Nothing hurts.
Right?
And that's when people forget to check in. That's when they forget to really embed the cultural dynamic.
Mhm.
So, catch it before it even tries to fall. And that's where the continual kind of check-ins. Are we living? Are we walking, talking, walking our talk?
Okay, you mentioned the vortex, and it's
Mm-hmm.
7, did you say 7 layers, 7
Yeah.
levels? There was
7 levels. Yeah.
What are those? What is this?
So they are all interconnected. It's not necessarily a linear thing. I use it as like a diagnostic tool, these 7 levels, 7 layers to the onion of dynamics. It's the structure of dynamics. And it starts at the top with the purpose. What is the purpose of the team? It trickles down to what is the identity of the team. Then it trickles down to what are the values of the team. Then it trickles down to what are the beliefs of the team and what kind of beliefs do they need to have. Then it trickles down to the behaviors, and then it trickles down to the environment. So it's like a cascading effect that the
Mhm.
values and the identity are definitely going to set a lot of the ultimate environment. Because when you see these value statements, you say, we believe in honesty, we believe in being upfront, but there might be some beliefs that need to be instilled and some skills instilled to actually get to walk that talk. And hence why the model is kind of like, yeah, it's not just a one paradigm thing. Culture, here we go. There's a lot of things that feed into it. Beliefs feed into it, skills feed into it, behaviors.
I love that. I love the vortex, honestly lands better for me because they all have to swirl together. They all have to be intermingling at the same time. Whereas a waterfall, you can watch it flow and then stop at a certain
Stop.
level. Whereas a vortex, not as easy to pinpoint. And I feel like that's true with culture. It's harder to pinpoint where things start to fall apart, at least in my experience.
Yep.
It's one of the areas that I definitely struggled in as a team coach.
Yep. And I guess that's where I'm attempting to put it down a bit more on piece of paper, because I think often with diagnostics, people look, oh, it's this one thing. Oh, it actually could be a multitude of things with regard to culture. And then at least we know, where do we start? Where do we start to go and look at the vortex, and where is it? Where is the chain kind of crumbling? Where is it breaking down? Is it beliefs? Is it skills? Oh yeah, we've got values. Do we have an identity? Does the team have some? Yeah, it might have a mascot, but what is our team identity? Not just the college's identity. What is our team identity? And then the purpose. Simon Sinek always talks about, start with a why. Why? So that my first question, why do we exist? And I get this deer in the headlight look. What she's
Like,
this is
huh?
fluffy.
We
Like,
exist
huh?
because we're a team.
We
We're here to play
exist
a
to
sport.
win. It's a given. Of
Yes,
course you
that's
want to
always the
win.
other one too.
Yeah. Do you want to leave a legacy? Do you want to leave the program better than it was before? Do you want to, because that's where it gets the emotional buy-in, and you got to have those conversations and extract it from people and teams.
Mhm. Absolutely. Adele, where can people connect with you and find you and potentially get support from you on helping them build their culture?
Oh, thank you. Website team-eq.com is normally the easiest kind of route. I love having discussions with people around this. Love just coming in and having opening up the doors to this thing called mechanics versus dynamics. And it's not that, maybe versus is the wrong way of putting it. The dynamics actually fuels the mechanics. Both are important. And when we only focus on mechanics, we are going to leave a lot to chance. And we've all heard stories of the David versus Goliath teams, the teams that out of nowhere have just come and taken the championship. It happened in the English Premier League once. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten the team's name. I think that wasn't. And they had no superstars. It was like a real Ted Lasso moment. No superstars. Like they had a salary cap that was like minuscule. Oh my gosh, I can't remember now. brain blank. But
Well, it
they'd
wasn't
exist.
Manchester United.
No, it was not them. They took down all the big dogs because their dynamic was like that vortex was almost a forceful in a good way vortex. They were able to outshine people, and it happens all the time. So yeah, teameq.com. There are some freebies there as well. You can have a look at this concept, because I understand there are some concepts. I stand bravely on the giants, or the shoulders of the giants before me. There are people, coaches in the world who have embraced this idea of culture. I really hope hope's not a strategy. I trust the conversation plants a seed that it's not a tick and flick. Oh, we've done the discussion on culture today. That's it. It is living, breathing. And it's so sexy when that happens, when people are really, and become the guide from the side. I always tell coaches, instead of the sage from the stage, become the guide from the side. I often ask coaches, so if I was in your herd, if you were a shepherd leading a flock, where would we find you in that flock? Are you going from the front? Are you at the back, or are you at the side? Where are you? And that kind of gives me a big indication of where they are with their leadership potential and journey.
Mhm.
So it is walking your talk. It is embedding it. It is refocusing it, using it as your home base. So coming back to it each time, hey, checking in, or how we're doing with that thing. We said we were going to, try and get to practice 10 minutes early, or we said we're going to have stretching time afterwards together. I don't know, like teams make up their own stuff. Are we doing that? Or is it just we did it once and that's it? Because that's the thing that teams do continuously on purpose in a good way. Those positive habits create, again, that culture. I think that the highest form of joy I got from feedback from because I asked for feedback too, huh? So it's not like we get the team to do feedback and I'm like, well, I don't need feedback. I get the team to give me feedback too. What worked well, what didn't work so well, where are my stretches? And I love that. I really do. Because to take feedback takes a lot of courage. It really does. To give feedback
Yes.
is courage, but to take it
Mhm.
as well takes a lot of courage. And old mate, it's Australia, old mate said to me, Adele, we were in the pool the other day and so, who's a very senior player, we were doing recovery laps and he didn't touch off at the side. Like he turned around before the touch off. And I said to him, that's not how we do it in our team. We play full out, we recover full out. And that cutting corner means you're going to cut corner somewhere else. And Olwe was like, oh,
Mhm.
shucks, yeah. And that's the type of empowerment that I'm talking about. It's not a I'm gonna rat on you kind of experience. It's like, hold on, we said we're not gonna cut corners. And we cut corners in our recovery, and we cut corners in our lead up to the season, or we're gonna cut corners in the game. And coming from a junior player to a very senior player, I was like, wow, that is gold. Absolute gold.
Yes, I love that. Okay, remind us what's the definition of culture?
Culture is the behavior that you allow within your team's environment. Does that hit
I love it.
it on the spot? But does that hit the mark?
It does, it totally does. Every time I hear it, I'm just like, "Oh, yes, that's" if people could just remember that, that would remind them over and over again, "This is why culture matters. This is why
Well,
we need to establish culture. This
it's
is why
it
we need to maintain culture."
it's one of the things I asked for straight up. I said, because we have very frank and honest conversations in the room. I go, so what counterproductive behavior is currently being tolerated? I get a what? Okay.
Mm,
What counterproductive behavior is currently being tolerated? That opens up the conversation.
mhm. Oh, yeah. Definitely going from that side of the house, thinking about, okay, counterproductive. What's the productive things? Some coaches I could definitely see where they would be like, yes, I'm on board thinking about what's counterproductive, but they're more times than not, they don't want to reveal where their team is falling apart. They'd rather talk about the good things and how to build on the good things.
And that's where I say, that whole feedback. People talk about feedback and they go, oh, yeah, I love feedback. Do you really? Like, can you sit
Right?
there in a feedback assessment with a group and not retort when somebody says, I saw this, I saw that, and go, I got you. Okay. Like, I'm making a note. That didn't work so well. Do you come up with a retort immediately? So feedback is one of the skills, because remember how I said in the vortex skills, behavior arts, feedback is one of the skills that is normally not there.
Yeah. Not tolerated, I think is the right
Yeah.
words. Not
Yeah.
tolerated or just harder to handle. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. So, it doesn't appeal to everybody. I say that off the bat. I had, meetings with people yesterday and they were like, I could see the squirm in their seats. And I said, it takes a big leader to go, let's embrace this. There are many out there that want to and that are yearning for it. I really, really do think if I'm talking now athletic directors, coaches, parents, we really have to up our game to support the new generation of leaders coming out. And we really have to lead from the side. And that means we might have to have some honest and hard conversations with ourselves too.
Absolutely. Honestly, coaches should be leveling up their games constantly, and that includes the mental side of the game that they have to coach as well, and this culture piece.
And
Yeah,
then, yeah, and
it's
the
totally
dynamics.
Mhm.
It
Yes, and all the dynamics.
maybe you would agree with me, maybe you wouldn't. Coaches are I think it's a vocation. It's not just, yeah, there's big money in it. I get it. I really do. Coaches who really love people and love playing and love the game, man, the world's your oyster, because you add this dynamic arrow to your bow. Is that the right, to your quiver? You've got the
Mhm,
mechanics, or you're good at assembling a mechanical side, technical people that can help you. And then you come with this
mhm.
flavor of dynamics that's robust. Whoa, coach,
Yes,
now
yes.
that's sexy. That's
That's
sexy.
rare.
Rare.
I like that it's
Well,
sexy, it's also rare.
well, the aim is to create more of them. The aim is to create more. So onwards and upwards.
Exactly. Yes, that's the magic wand right there. Hoo-pa! Get everybody to level up understanding not just the mechanics, but the dynamics. Adele, thank you so unbelievably much for this conversation. Team-eq.com is where you can find her. Please, please go check out what freebies she's got for you, as well as how she can help support your team with your culture.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And yeah, good day again from down under, and look forward to connecting with more people out there. This will be great.
Yay.
Thanks for listening to Spirit of an Athlete podcast. If you're struggling with your own gut issues and want more direction, you can get an initial body scan from Amanda at bodywhisperhealing.com. In 20 minutes, you can find out what's wrong, get clarity, map the path forward, and get on track to get back in your game. If this episode hits the spot, please let us know by rating, reviewing, and sharing it with a friend. Subscribe now to hear more inspiring stories from other female college athletes who overcame their health issues. Want more, Amanda? Get inspired by finding more at bodywhisperhealing.com.